Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Steffi. Thank you so much, Stefano. Actually, the amazing thing about Steffi, I always say Steffi is the great junction maker. It's actually DLD every day of the year because Steffi brings people together all year long. We should give her a big round of applause. I'm so grateful to Steffi and to Maria for this amazing gathering today. And the urgency of the topic of what we are discussing here is, of course, omnipresent. It's also very present in a very new book, which is coming out as we speak, the new book of Roman Kajarnik, History for Tomorrow, Inspirations from the Past for the Europe, actually for the future of humanity. And it's a book which I very much recommend because it's an extraordinary book which is a call for breaking the fossil fuel dependency, but also showing how this has to happen in a very holistic way, related to many other things, nurturing tolerance, kicking consumer habits, taming social media, securing resources for all, reviving faith in democracy, managing the genetic revolution, bridging the inequality gap, keeping machines under control, averting civilizational breakdown, and last but not least, very importantly, giving reasons for radical hope. And all of that, I think, is the case in Stefano Boeri's work. We are very lucky to have Stefano with us here today. Stefano is one of the great architects and urbanists of our time. He is also the president of the Triennale in Milano, which makes the Triennale not an artist-run space, but an architect-run space, which is fascinating. One of the big institutions in Italy. Stefano has offices in Milan, in Shanghai, and also in Tirana. We met almost 30 years ago, and from the very first day when I met with Stefano, what I was so impressed by is Stefano's capacity to always combine design and research. Because, of course, design and research are two very different activities. Research is inclusive, is widening, has to bring in everything, whilst design has to do with selection, has to do with choices, right? And the practice of Stefano always oscillates and, of course, is deeply connected to the theme we are all discussing here today, the climate emergency, biodiversity. Stefano has come up with amazing projects. We're going to discuss them today, like vertical forests, building as vertical forest, urbanism which brings in trees, but also has incredible unrealized projects. And one of the beautiful things about DLD is that very often unrealized projects are discussed here, and because they are discussed here, they afterwards become a reality. So we're going to not only focus today on Stefano's build projects, but we're also going to hear from him about some not yet realized dreams which will have a very major environmental impact if they will be realized. In all of these projects, Stefano brings the disciplines together. We got to know each other through many collaborations on Domus magazine in the early 2000s, but also when we taught together as professors in Venice at UAF. And this was a great experience because we brought together Stefano's seminar for architecture and my seminar for art. And I think we should never forget that if we want to address and also solve the big challenges of the 21st century we are discussing here, it's super important that we break down the silos, that we go beyond the fear of pooling knowledge, that we all collaborate, and that is very much at the core of Stefano Boeri's practice. Please give him a very warm welcome. And Stefano, I thought to begin with, it would be great if we could talk a little bit about trees and forests, because I always remember having a conversation with your mother, the great designer Jeannie Boeri, and she told me that Stefano, as a child, always ran into the forest. Stefano was obsessed by the forest. And then you started to bring this obsession of yours for trees into your architecture, and it, of course, led to this amazing invention. We're going to have images here of the Bosco Verticale. Can you tell us a bit about the genesis of this incredible project?
Thank you, Hans. Well, it is true. Obsession are, from many points of view, much more powerful than passions. They are, let's say, used to be invisible. They come up suddenly. And, well, honestly, I understood in a certain moment of my life that I had to face with this obsession for trees. Also, not let's say, abandoning my my point of view as an architect, my point of view as a professional. So I started 30 years ago to try to do my best to imagine how to realize buildings, and basically high-rise building where trees should be considered as tenants, like humans and birds and insects and so on. And at the beginning it was very hard, but then I had, well, the opportunity to design in Milan, in the center of Milano, two, let's say, vertical forests. They are turning 10 years now, so it was an experiment, it was a prototype. Let's say, I believe, extremely interesting as a test, because these two buildings are hosting 21,000 plants of more than 60 different species. They are hosting more than 20 different species of birds that are nesting there at the different floors, millions of insects, and 363 humans. So I think this idea to try to have in one architecture such a complex ecosystem where different living beings are cohabiting and coexisting, it's an amazing experiment. And I could say now that after 10 years was a successful experiment, and we are now also doing our best to replicate the same prototype in different parts of the world, trying also to let's say, to learn from the mistake, to learn from. I think it's always important for professionals like mine to be in condition to learn from the mistakes and go ahead. So, for instance, we are building in different parts of the world. We're building in China, we are building in Europe, we're building in Africa, we're building in South America, trying to adapt this building to the climate condition and to adapt them also to the multitude of living beings that will habit them.
Now, the building in Milano is, of course, in the center of the city, and it's a building, which is, in that sense, a unique building. But you're interested, of course, also in bringing these vertical forests into much sort of wider context, and also really creating them for everyone, making it accessible. So it's an interesting model also to bring this into social housing, and there is a project for Eindhoven. Can you talk a little bit about that? How to scale it? No, it's a question of scaling.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. One of the, let's say, of the issue we tried to, it was how to make this new typology of buildings affordable for everybody. The first one in Milano was quite expensive because, well, we had to invest a lot of money in the research. So we had to study how to have a tree maybe 20, 25 meter high at 100 to 120 meters, how to irrigate this multitude of plants, how to deal with the wind, no? So how to imagine to fix the roots of every plant in order to avoid accident. So we have worked a lot, and then at a certain moment we understood that it was possible to make all these knowledges. Just another example is about water management. Water management is super important when we design a building with plants and trees. So how you can reuse, recycle grey water, for instance, how you can pump underground water on the top and then study a system of irrigation that is absolutely not expensive, and so on and so on and so on. But we really wanted to try to cut the construction cost of our buildings. We had done two main experiences, one in China, one in Holland, in Eindhoven, where we had built a social housing, vertical forest, which is in Eindhoven. And I think it's also such a great experiment because it works quite well. It turned 3 years now, and it's hosting only students and young researchers, young couples. It's only for rent. And that's, for me, it's really, let's say, a very important result because what we should do.
Now, I mentioned, the necessity of collaboration, the necessity of breaking down silos, and that's, of course, super important with this project because it's not only an architectural project, it's a project where you bring together science, you work with botanists. And the interesting thing is, when I saw in your studio the process, is that it sort of changes also the methodology of an architect, because you're not arriving in a city and designing a form or a shape of a building, but actually the form of the building develops out of these conversations. Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration with science, the collaboration with botanists? Because of course the selection of the plants is always local. It's also each time a very different situation.
No, you are totally right. So the relation with botanists is crucial for us, since it's clear that we start every time considering the climate conditions and how they are changing. Then we select the species of trees, plants, and only at that very moment we start to imagine the architecture of the building. So we start to design the facade, let's say, trying to allow any species to, let's say, to have its own life trajectory in between balcony and the other, in between a loggia or a balcony. So I think it's a kind of new way also to design architecture, where living nature is not simply like a kind of decoration, like it happens normally, but it's a basic component. It's something we start from the beginning. And this is exactly what we are very proud to do.
And it's a planetary project because you connect. You connect different, you call them hotspots of biodiversity. And that, of course, connects also to the work of Richard Weller at Penn University, who identifies these hotspots and says we basically need to connect all the biodiversity hotspots in the planet. Can you explain a little bit how that then leads to...
Richard is a very good friend. He teaching at Penn, and at a certain moment he started to think of how to realize a kind of world park. So world park is in itself quite a strong concept, maybe a little bit utopistic, but what he says is very pragmatic. So he says, well, let's start connecting, so creating some biological corridors that could connect all the biodiversity hotspots present on the planet. And how to connect them? Well, through forest, through, I would say, biodiversity corridors, but also, let's say, making these corridors experienceable. So something that you can walk through, you can experience these connections. And he proposed 3 planetary biological corridors that are connecting all these hotspots, showing how much, you see here, how much the realization of this corridor was amazing, was contribute to implement the advantages of biodiversity. And he was really stressing this connection between biodiversity and connectivity. And immediately after this launch, we started to work on an idea of making also these South European corridors real. So we started to work in Italy on that. And in a way, we should say that this is an innovation. It's also such a very strong idea, but the origin of the idea, it's another. So the origin of the idea is in 2007, when the countries of African Union started to design this amazing green Great Wall from Senegal to Ethiopia that had the function to try to stop the extension of the Sahara Desert. And that model, which is still ongoing, it's with some difficulties, as you can imagine, but it's still there, and it's so important for us, and we have to work on that and study it. It's a model also that we should repeat in other parts of the planet.
And that leads us, of course, to a project which is not realized yet. And we all could hear this morning the vision of Ursula von der Leyen for a EU environmental, vision, we can say. And you have actually a vision for our EU park. And I thought it would be a wonderful connection to hear a little bit how you imagine this EU park to function.
No, I think it's not simply a slogan. I believe that for sure what the European Commission is doing is super important. Natural resource law is amazing. And a shame as an Italian that my government didn't vote that agreement. But I think we should also add to this very important, let's say, public policy, a vision. And I think that the vision of Europe as a park which apparently is a little bit contradictory because we are used to say, and Hans knows very well, that we are normally used to say that Europe is like an archipelago of cities. No? We have thousands of small, middle-sized cities everywhere. But why not to start to reverse gaze and try to see how we could connect mountains, lakes, rivers, hills, and to make this park perceivable by people, imagining to develop, let's say, a system of caminos, like Caminos de Compostela, so walkways where you can have an idea of how Europe is one unique territory, is one unique environment. And this is also another, let's say, another possible result of this concept, of this vision, is that we probably had to rediscover this multitude of historical villages, of hamlets that we have in Europe that are sometimes abandoned and that are the presidium of living nature in our continent. So I think that this concept of Park Europe could become the vision that we need to, let's say, to straighten the public policies and to also collect the private resources.
And that leads us to another really important unrealized project, which is your idea to have a ministry of forests. And that, of course, has to do with the fact that, I mean, Tim Ingold wrote a beautiful book, These Are Letters to Trees. It's about listening, to trees, listening to animals. It's something I do on my TikTok, I started to do on TikTok interviews with plants, interviews with animals. And you push these ideas further in terms of listening to trees by actually having a ministry of trees, a ministry of forests. Can you explain your vision for that, I think, so far unrealized project?
No, we need plants, we need trees everywhere. We need trees in our cities. Cities are producing the 72% of the CO2 that are in our atmosphere. So we need trees to try to reduce this tremendous responsibility that it has. We need trees to clean the air. We need trees to absorb the dust or pollution. We need trees to shade. And that's another very important point. In the next future, we will need more and more plants because we need shade. It will become a scarce resource. And this is not only for the country of North Africa, but also something very important, as we have heard this morning, also for Europe. And but we need trees also for another reason, and that also is connected with our idea of Europe Park. But Europe is a continent forest, from Iceland to Sicily, from Portugal to Serbia. It's the forests are, let's say, one kind of unique skin that are connecting this continent. But forests are not only there to, let's say, to defend living beings and to protect nature. Forests are also resources. And if we think how we could try to make all what we do in our sector as builders, so I'm talking about architecture, I'm talking about real estate, and how much we are responsible for CO2 emission, and how the use of wood, the use of timber in our buildings could drastically reduce this production. I think that the idea of a ministry of forest that could really give to every country an idea of what will be possible to do to implement the forest surface inside and outside cities, but also to use trees, to use plants as a resource for a kind of cycle of production that are directly involving a real estate market.
So we've got the EU Park, we've got the Ministry of Trees. Very last point, because I think we are out of time, but I wanted to ask you about an incredible project which is actually being realized, and that is the Lumini Project. And it connects deeply to yesterday, this incredible talk by Vandana Shiva, and we spoke with Vandana at length last night, about this necessity for a holistic vision, to bring together all dimensions, also have a self-sufficient architecture. And of course, with the Lumini Project, you also create a connection to spirituality. So to wrap it up, let's talk about this amazing project of yours, and let's travel to Lumbini.
Yeah, we have been asked to realize in Nepal, in Lumbini. Lumbini is where Buddha was born. But as you probably know, Buddha was born in a very rich family and became Buddha in India when he was 29, and he started to abandon Nepal. But 35 years ago, a group of archaeologists discovered there is a stupa below a hill where it's possible to find the last part of the Buddha's relics that have not been dismantled and fragmented. So now Lumbini has become a place where millions of pilgrims and all the Buddhist schools that are coming from all over the world are proposing to create a new hub. But this new hub is not around the stupa, it's not around the building, it's not around the square or a city, it's around a hill and a tree. So we have been asked to think how to deal with this idea, and so knowing how much Buddhism is related with the idea of coexistence of living being, we have imagined a park and a forest. So this, let's say, huge hub for Buddhist and not Buddhist pilgrims, it's a park, it's a forest. And well, that's what makes, I think, us very happy with that.
When I asked Stefano to summarize in one sentence what this is all about, Stefano said it's about forests of humans and about cities of trees. And we're going to leave you with the thought, forests of humans, cities of trees. A big round of applause for Stefano Boeri.
Thank you so much.